I believe that learning is a lifelong adventure. I believe that we should never stop learning. In fact, that what I was looking at is, my husband and I say we want our boys to learn how to learn. We want them to be able, I think the world sends you so much information, and with social media and technology right now, it just comes at you so fast. And so we want them to just grow up and be able to take all this information and process it and come up with their own opinions and what they think is right or wrong and what they need to do. And I don't believe you can do that if you stop learning. And I think it's important that we model that to our children.
Hi, welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zan Tyler podcast, where our goal is to help you thrive in your homeschool journey. Let me take just a minute to ask you to please subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen or watch, including YouTube. And if this podcast has been an encouragement to you, please leave us a good review. Each review helps us and helps other families like yours find us. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We post a lot of content there. Well, thanks for joining us for the second part of this conversation with Elizabeth Pyle as we talk about what it means to embrace the fact that the world is your classroom. Closely related to this, we'll talk about field trips and the great fun and dimension they add to your lives and your homeschool. Elizabeth is the homeschooling mom of two sons, ages 12 and 13, and a homeschool consultant for Homeworks by Precept. You don't want to miss this encouraging episode. This podcast is brought to you by BJU Press Homeschool. Homeschooling is an exciting adventure we take with our children. One of the most challenging parts of this journey is choosing the curriculum you want to use. BJU Press Homeschool is a curriculum you can trust. All the books, resources, and videos have been designed with you and your child in mind. Their curriculum is educationally robust and rich, taking into account that children have different learning styles, strengths, and needs. Mom, you are in charge. BJU Press Homeschool is here to come alongside and support you. Do you need help with the teaching load, or is there a subject you just don't want to teach? Their amazing video courses are available for all grades and almost every subject. BJU Press Homeschool believes that homeschooling can produce a new generation of students who know God, love their neighbors, and stand firm in their faith. For more information, go to bjupresshomeschool.com. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. Let's talk for just a minute about something you even do a workshop on, and that's this whole idea of field trips. Tell me what captivated your interest about field trips and why you think they're important.
I have just always been a field trip person. I love to know how things work. If my husband will tell you, if you will give me a back-scene tour of the kitchen at a restaurant, I will be the first one in line. I just like to see how anything and everything works. We had a guy working on the roof the other day, and he was showing me this vent, and I was asking him all these questions. He's like, "You're really interested in this." I'm like, "I just want to know how it works." And so I wanted to instill that love of learning and being curiosity to my boys. And so we just field trips have just become not really part of our homeschool, I wouldn't say, just part of our life. And just learning and just taking that opportunity. And I liken it to the movie, The Night of Museum. He's the night officer or night watchman at the New York Natural History Museum. And then all the displays and everything come to life. And you've got the T-Rex running through. You've got Teddy Roosevelt on a horse, and you can just really see the history and you can just understand it. And I just kind of liken that when we go out on field trips and see things in the world, it just makes the world and what my boys are learning, and even just not only learning academically, just learning how to behave in the world. It just comes aligned and it allows the pieces to just be put in place.
Well, I think it's so much value. I always say I've got these little stickers. I wish I had it in front of me, but that say when you homeschool, the world is your classroom.
Absolutely.
And we really want our children to understand the world around them. I think a lot of people think homeschool kids have their head in the sand, but actually they're out and about with people different ages and seeing a lot of things that you could never see within the four walls of a classroom. I can remember talking to one college admissions advisor, personnel at a college, and he said, Zan, we really expected homeschool kids to be the kids with their head in the sand when they came to college. And yet they're the kids who know how to use a syllabus, they're independent learners. And he said, but oh my word, how do they end up being leaders? We just thought they would be tied to their mom's apron strings, but they really have a sense of confidence about them and they want to be leaders on campus and they understand the world a lot. And I just thought, well, isn't that interesting? Coming from this man, what he expected homeschoolers to be and what he's seeing that homeschool students actually are.
Well, and I think that's too because when you're at a school, you're really mainly interacting with your peers, which is fantastic and definitely the way it should be. You're not you have limited interaction with the teacher more than like the teacher's more talking at you and not a whole lot of conversation. But in homeschool, when you're out and about, whether it's running errands during the day if you need to, or just the way that our structure, our kids get to interact with so many different just ages and people and in different positions than they would if they were just at a traditional school for 8 hours a day.
That's right. It really does make a difference. And one thing I want to ask you how you plan the particular field trips and how you decide which ones to take.
Oh, what a great question. Um, so the first thing I do each year, and I tell this in my workshop, I'm very honest, August Elizabeth, she is a planner. The homeschool is going to be amazing. She's got all these great things. May Elizabeth, a little tired, a little worn out, a little more frantic of getting things done. So I really try to make sure that August Elizabeth is the one who looks at all this and maybe less the May Elizabeth. But I sit down with our teacher editions. Again, I use BJU Press Homeschool, and they have these fantastic teacher editions, and it lays out all the lesson plans. And if I'm using a video course for my kids that year, I pull out again the teacher editions as well as just our lesson guide that goes through that the teacher is. And I kind of see what concepts are being covered and what topics. And then I kinda line those up with what we have around here, in Dallas-Fort Worth. We have such a wealth of places to visit, and I just kinda just try to get an overview and say, "Oh, we might wanna go here, or we might wanna do this." And that's one way I do. The thing that I have learned throughout the years is to be a little bit more flexible, than just straight planning. So I really look at just things that are going on around us. I follow like the local libraries, the local towns that are around, and I see what seasonal things are because there for a while it was always like, oh, that looked like fun. Oh, that was last weekend. Um, so I try to look a little bit more ahead on the calendars and to kind of plan out what we will do. So having that flexibility and just realizing that not everything has to be a perfectly planned field trip um, has allowed us to have like just a lot of unexpected, great little memories and learning experiences.
One of the things I really encourage moms to do, and I didn't do this until my last child, you just have all these great thoughts sometimes when you have time to think, and that's sometimes when your kids are all grown and gone. But one of the things that I really encourage moms to do now is sometime in the summer, like you were talking about August, Elizabeth, sometime during August or before the school year starts, just interview each one of your kids and ask them questions like, if there's one thing you'd like to study this year, what would it be? And if there's one or two field trips you would like to take, what would those be? What would you like to see that we've never seen? And just questions like, if you could visit somebody, who would you visit? If you could go to a national park or a state park, which one would that be? And so sometimes a child's not going to have an answer for some of those questions, but you can look them up together. And so there's a book I quote a lot. It's called The Brilliant Idiot by a man named Abraham Smith, I believe, is the author. I need to verify that. But he has his PhD and he was learning disabled. And so he said sometimes he still wakes up and he has a mental fog and he knows that day that not much academically is going to happen. And so, I say to moms, I would just know every once in a while, you just know if you sit down with bookwork that day, it's not going to happen. And you can't do that every day, but once a week, once every other week, then you've got your list of, oh, you said you'd love to take this field trip. You're redeeming the time. It's educational. They're learning things they would never learn from a book. And you can, I think it's just a great way to experience school, education. The world is your
The
classroom.
world is your yes. And that's what we're ultimately trying to do is teach them how to live and interact into the world. And so, one thing we try to do is we kind of think of it as two types of field trips. We kind of have our local field trips that we can do with our list, and then we like to do some travel trips as well. And those may be like where we go somewhere just for field trips and education, or maybe we like to visit my mother-in-law down in Louisiana, and we tack a lot of field trips on when we go to visit her.
Right,
And,
right. Now, do you look for things to do while you're driving, or once you get to Louisiana, you find the field trips?
um, what a great thing. I sat down, I think, one when we were kinda heading down there one time and wrote a big list of different things we wanted to do. Now, a lot of those things on the list is where my husband was from, so he wanted to take us back to, just different places, that he has been. And so we've kinda, checked a lot of those off, of our list when we're down there. But sometimes we just happen upon them. Uh, as an art teacher, I love teaching The Blue Dog, by George Rodrigue, and I was talking about it one day, and my mother-in-law said, "You know he's from here." And I was like, "From here?" Well, he was born in the same town as my husband is from, and so he used to have a little cafe, and so, the cafe is no longer there, we didn't realize, so we stopped in, we had lunch, and there is a huge piece of art of his still there that we got to see, and so we drove down. We did know he had an art gallery, so we stopped into the art gallery, and, it's less of an art gallery, it's more they ship out the prints, but one of the, art gallery, I guess, manager that was there, she actually knew him, and so she sat and showed us all kinds of his arts, told us his story, and it was just really, really memorable. So it was kinda something I had on my list, but not really, but just that what I mentioned earlier about that flexibility of just kinda letting things happen, and we got to spend I mean, we were probably in there for an hour or more just talking with her and looking at the different art, and it was really, really neat because my boys had obviously seen it when I taught it and on a piece of paper, but then to see it right there, is really
Yeah,
special.
that's amazing. I mean, and that really is when learning and life intersect. And I think that's what we're after is that they're not getting this education that's not related to anything, but they're
Right.
getting an education that's related to real life in the real world.
Yes.
And I think okay, so you have 3 great questions to ask your children, to reflect upon after a field trip. Do you have that list in front of
I
you?
do I do
Okay.
not okay,
Okay,
but I know
I've
you
got
do.
them, and
Okay.
I'll be glad to read them, or you can probably give them by heart.
Well, I came up with this when I was putting together this workshop, and even way before this workshop, you think of, like, the perfect field trip, and in my eyes is you have this planning and you set it up with the background and you give all the facts and things to look for your kids, and then you would go, and then you would do some kind of fun activity, like, afterwards to reflect and maybe more than just writing a paper, maybe a project or a diorama or something, and sometimes that's just not, especially May Elizabeth, how I can get it all together, or it just does we don't have enough time with our studies. So when I sat down and thought, when I first really started with field trips, I thought, what can we do that still is reflection and still bringing everything together, but not the "What'd you learn today?"
Right, right.
types of things.
Mhm, mhm.
Because I think that's like, especially with teenagers or anybody, or when you're tired coming home, I don't know, a lot,
Or
right? It's a normal
Yes.
response.
Yeah.
So yes, so I did come up with just three questions. Um, what surprised you the most today? Because I really think that gives them a type to think, oh, not what I liked most today. What surprised you the most? It,
That's a great question,
you know,
actually, that's a really good question.
and sometimes it's not always just part of what we saw. Sometimes it's like, I thought this building would be a lot bigger. Um,
Right.
or, you
Mhm.
know, it was kind of weird the way this was laid out. I thought that the dinosaurs would be here and then this and then this, different ways. And, sometimes. Um, then I asked them, what would you like to learn more about? If you could pick one thing and find out more, or answer a question that you had, or you didn't were like, huh, or what really intrigued you if you wanted to go back out and look at. And that always, I think, also encourages them that um, my boys don't have phones, but sometimes in the car, I'll hand them my phone and they'll ask a question and we'll kind of think, "Oh, well, I was wondering about this," and they'll look it up while I'm driving home, and it's just a great way to kinda, like I said, wrap it all up and, bring it back together, more than even just writing a research paper, or you're trying to do it, and, it also has taught them how to use not social media, but a phone, a technology appropriately. This is an appropriate time when nobody's really talking to you. We're looking it up, we're having a dialogue with the phone as a tool. And, then the last one is, how does this connect to something you've learned? And that one's always an interesting one because sometimes, to be honest, maybe it hasn't always been in the curriculum, but we can always find a way to bring it back, whether it was something we've learned in Bible, whether it's something we've learned in geography or English. We try to find a way, brainstorm of bringing it back together.
Mhm, mhm. I think that is so powerful because I really think that the conversation on the way home, whether it's anything formal or not, is one of the greatest ways to build their critical thinking skills. You're asking them questions and they're having to think about it. And I think that's a powerful part of the field trip process. And it's like you say, it doesn't have to be anything formal. It just can be those discussions. I love the one about what's the biggest surprise because it's hard to pick out the best sometimes. What was the thing you liked the
Right.
best? I really like that question. I'm going to use that with my grandkids. I like
Yeah.
that.
It's just easy and fun, and, and I always tell them, I'm like, when you go into work, or you have a big event, or you do things in life, you like to have what we call a debrief.
Yes.
We use
Mhm.
it a lot in our business, and so this is kind of our debrief, about the field trip and what we've done today.
Some of the field trips we've taken have been a little unusual. Like there'll be this artisans craft fair around Christmas time here. And so the boys or and then Lizzie when she was older, their assignment would be to pick out 3 craftsmen in slightly different areas and ask them 3 questions. It can be, "How did you get into it? What do you like about it? How could I?" But they have their 3 questions that they ask because that's a forum where you can really interview somebody, especially if it's not really busy. And then on the way home, they would discuss the answers that the artist gave them. And, so there are all kinds of field trips like that where you might have a chance to interview someone.
Absolutely. We went to Disney this last fall, and I'll piggyback on that. And Disney was a field trip, just in his mouth. And when my boys were at Epcot, all the workers for the different countries are actually from those countries, and they come over here for a while. So they would go and ask them, and they came up with this all on their own, um, which made me sit there and go, we are on vacation at a theme park doing school. This is the neatest thing. So they went up to each worker from the different countries as we would visit and asked them the same thing. What do you like best about America? What has kind of surprised you? What do you miss the most? All the way down, they would ask them, just like their food. What's your favorite food? Can you get that over here? And they got to get a little bit more sense of people from many different countries than they ever would have from a book.
It really is amazing. It is amazing when you get your kids out, and it doesn't always have to be to someplace expensive.
No,
There are so many field trips you can take that are free or negligible, in terms of the price.
I always say do not discount a good park day. Your
Absolutely,
local
yep.
parks are free. We have a sweet group of friends we like to meet, and there's just so many things that you can do, at a park day. And sometimes um, the field trip's important, but like we said, the schoolwork just isn't coming. It's just kind of thing. It's just a good break to get out and to get outside and just taking a walk through the park or a hike or whatever you have around you. There's so much just to see and do. You can see, the animals, the insects, all kinds of things, right there in your own backyard.
That is so interesting. Joe and I just got back from speaking at the New Mexico conference, and right out the back door of Albuquerque, I mean, in this 1.5 hour loop, there were so many places where we could see cliff dwellers, the
Ah,
Native American homes, and artist communities, and beautiful landscapes, and at some of the state and national parks. And so we're close to the beach and close to the mountains, but we're not close to anything like that.
right.
So, make the most of where you live.
And I always say, it doesn't have to be a special trip or anything fancy. You may just be visiting family,
Yes, right.
or having family come and visit you. I don't know if you've ever, been somewhere and maybe you have done the touristy things and you're like, I've never done that like where I live, or, there's got to be stuff. And so I always say, think about if you were coming to visit your town or community, what would you take someone to go do, or what would you like to go do? And go do those. Go do those with your kids. And it might just be, just something, pretty interesting, just right here.
Joe and I travel so much now, and we're always asking locals, "What's your favorite thing to see or do?" And they'd say, "Well, this is what everybody wants to see when they come here, but we've never taken the time to do it."
Exactly.
So take the time to do
Hey,
what's in your backyard.
do it right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at what, you can teach your children just right where you are at home.
That's exactly right. Well, Elizabeth, one thing I want to talk about before we end our time today is your motto. Tell us what your motto is.
I believe that learning is a lifelong adventure. I believe that we should never stop learning. In fact, that what I was looking at is, my husband and I say we want our boys to learn how to learn. We want them to be able, I think the world sends you so much information, and with social media and technology right now, it just comes at you so fast. And so we want them to just grow up and be able to take all this information and process it and come up with their own opinions and what they think is right or wrong and what they need to do. And I don't believe you can do that if you stop learning. And I think it's important that we model that to our children. It's what I like to tell them of, oh, I never learned this in school. And let's explore this a little bit longer. It's why we do so many field trips is we want to learn about this, but let's go visit this. Let's go see. You know, we're learning about ecosystems. We go to the zoo. Let's go look and see what the animals look like from the different continents. It's again, you can look at pictures, but when it's right there in your backyard, it's important to go and do. And I'm a researcher by nature. I love it, and I want to learn just as much as I can about just everything, whether it's a person I've met or a place I'm visiting. I like to know what it is.
Well, you are also a consultant with Homeworks by Precept, which represents it's a company that represents BJU Press homeschool curriculum. So tell us a little bit about that and why you decided to become a consultant.
Oh, great question. Yes, so I am a Homeworks by Precept consultant. I say that I'm a homeschool consultant. We do represent BJU Press Homeschool, and our job is to equip and educate and encourage our customers and other homeschool moms.
It's like a mentoring or just you're a counselor or an encourager.
It is, it
Yeah.
is. As a counselor and an encourager, and, for me personally, it's so fulfilling to be able to tell people, "This is how I started. This is how I would, get into homeschooling. These are the things that have worked and not worked for me. These are the things that if I could go back, I would tell myself or maybe do differently." That you get that hindsight 2020, that it's okay to, go against the norm and the status quo and pull your kids out of school and homeschool, and they're going to thrive and they're going to be better because of it. And you are going to be better because of it. And it's a great journey. And so it's very fulfilling and it's a very much a passion of mine. And I really enjoy it. I actually just had a lady, a friend, I will call her friend now, who called and we had been talking, and she's homeschooling her youngest, but her oldest, she wanted to have that school experience, and he was being bullied, and it was, just heartbreaking, and I was able to share my story and my journey, and she met my son, and she saw that he is happy and thriving, and she decided to homeschool, and it has been the best decision for them. And, a year or so later, he's doing wonderful, and he's like, I would have never I always wanna do that. I would never wanna go back, and it's not just from the bullying, he just loves what he's being able to learn, and so, yes, as a homeschool consultant, I love, to help that.
Well, if you want to find out more about the BJU Press homeschool curriculum, you can find a consultant in your area by going to homeschoolhelp.com/map and click on your state and find a consultant in your area. And Elizabeth, tell people how they can find you.
Absolutely. Well, I am in, you can go, to the map, and locate me. I am in Texas, in the Dallas area. You can also go I also have a, Homeworks by Precept I have a consultant, Facebook page. I think it is Elizabeth Pyle,
Well,
HWP.
okay, and we'll put that in the show notes as
Okay,
well.
perfect. Thank you so much. And I have an Instagram, and you are welcome to contact me there or go to the map. You can find my contact information. You're welcome to email me, call me. I am here. I would love to chat with anyone. All things homeschool.
Well, thank you so much for being with me today on the Zan Tyler podcast. It's been such a delight, Elizabeth, and you've got such a wealth of information to share with people. Will you be speaking at any more conferences this year, or is conference season over for you?
It is not over. I will be actually doing my field trips. The world is your classroom, down at the Great Homeschool Convention in Round Rock in July. So I am very, very excited to present that workshop again.
Well, great. Well, we just want to thank you for being with us today. We know you have a lot of places you can spend your time, so thank you for spending these brief minutes with us. We pray that God continues to bless you and your children as you homeschool them. And until next time, bye.